everyone, welcome to Bad and Desi, the podcast where we unpack the life between cultures. You're listening to Brown Girl Unfiltered, a series where South Asian women speak their truth. No filters, no expectations, just healing, honesty, and power. Today's guest is someone who doesn't advocate for change, she lives it. Tiara De Silva is a 23-year-old Sri Lankan human rights advocate, the advocacy lead at SSI, and a board director. She's currently studying politics at the University of Sydney, great uni. I went there, but her real education has come from lived experiences, navigating mental illness, cultural stigma, and being one of the few to speak up when everyone else stayed silent. This episode is about what happens when brown girls break the cycle and use their pain to fight for something bigger. Thank you so much for being here today,
Tiara. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. I think this is a very important topic to talk about and not really spoken up about so much. Can you tell us a little bit about why this is so important to you?
I think I grew up in a very progressive family in every sense of the word. Like, my parents are very progressive. My sisters are both lawyers. So a lot of things were always up for debate in my household, which was very unconventional, I guess, for a Desi family or a South Asian family. And it's not that mental health was never talked about. It's just that reality of you don't really talk about it unless something happens or until it happens to you. And it wasn't even the log kya kahenge of it all. It was more so this is really uncomfortable to talk about. Everyone has their issues. You know, it's the elephant in the room.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And when that happened to me, when I directly realized there was an elephant in the room, which was something as common but also as nuanced as grief of a parent dying, it was a bit hard to talk about even with my family, even though we were all so supportive of each other. And that was because of the stigma. And I was in a situation where I wasn't inherently told not to go to therapy. I wasn't told not to do something. It was just awkward. And that's the best, you know, in terms of a lot of other situations that my peers had been in when it came to mental health, or a lot of other people in the community or respective communities. And so I said, if it's hard for me to talk, then there are people in other circumstances that definitely have it worse that aren't talking. And I think when I started advocating or talking shit online more so, a lot of people were like, I didn't know we could talk about this, or I don't know how you started talking about it. And really, I was just chatting, like, you know what I mean? And I found the importance of that when a couple of my friends and I had a conversation that was like, I felt like I couldn't relate to anyone until you started talking about it openly, which feels strange, but it is sort of the thing that a lot of people, brown people especially in the space online, are doing now, especially a lot of the older women. And those are the women that I look up to, and that I'm like, you know what, we can all keep doing this and we can all keep doing it together.
Yeah. I love that. Why do you feel like that stigma has existed and continues to exist?
Our families have experienced so much, whether it's war, genocide, socio-political issues in the motherland, you know, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan. There are so many issues, but I do think it's that added layer of, you know, log kya kahenge, and then in Sinhala it's like ane mama moka da karane, which is like, what do I do about it? It's the whole like mind your business aspect of it, or like, what are we going to do about it, or what are they going to say? And I think there's a really big that's the big cultural aspect of, like, you know, what are we going to do about it? And also in general, it's just quite uncomfortable to talk about mental health. Like, you can't even, sex ed isn't even talked about in Desi families. What do you mean we have to touch on mental health? Yeah, and address those really uncomfortable, sad feelings. So I think that's where majority of it stems from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so powerful that you've found a personal experience and then you're actually doing something about it. A lot of people, they kind of, you know, they experience something and then they remain silent for the rest of their lives. So you're empowering people by raising your voice.
Oh, thanks.
Do you feel like in the current environment that we live in, that things are getting better in terms of talking about mental health or talking about all of these different topics that you raise awareness about?
Yes, because there are so many, especially like I was speaking about, like online Instagram, there are so many Desi men and women that are so vocal about it. And that gives me more power. And I think that that gives us as a community more power, because I think it doesn't, like, it takes often a singular conversation or a singular person to catalyze it for everyone. But I think the best thing is that what sustains this conversation is the fact that everyone is involved from so many different places and from such diverse experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. What's something that you would say that maybe someone that might be watching right now should do more of to invite these conversations in their environment, at home or in their friend circle?
I think the first step is to truly sit with yourself and understand what you feel, where it's coming from, because I think having the conversation is very hard, but I think identifying how you feel is also really important, because then you find the right words, and sometimes the right words for your emotions don't even exist. Like, it's like when you have to explain grief to a really young child, sometimes you have to use synonyms, or sometimes you have to be like, oh, this person is passed away, or they're not coming back. You don't use the word death sometimes in relation to my personal experience. But I think identify how you feel, and be honest with yourself. And then when you're going to approach the conversation is going to be really hard. It's going to be really difficult, but always follow up with yourself and whoever you engage in conversations with, whether that's a, hi, are you okay? How are you feeling about it? And you don't need to be pushy. It's just like a simple question. So always follow up with yourself and be sure to identify your feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. I feel like oftentimes you don't actually realize who in your friendship group is going through something. And we're really good at masking in the environment that we live in our professional lives and in our personal lives. We have this tendency to not show what we're actually feeling. And you barely show that to people in the world because you don't want to be seen as vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, vulnerability impedes success in the professional environment, for example. So I think those are really great points to ask the why, but then ask the why again.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay? What happened?
Yeah.
Why? Like,
Why?
actually,
What happened?
take some interest,
Yeah.
a little deeper interest in your immediate circle. Now, you've touched on some life events really lightly just then.
Yeah.
I know this is really heavy for you.
Yeah.
But are you comfortable in sharing your story about what makes you you and why you're doing what you are?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. So I think my advocacy started, well, around mental health specifically, is when my tate or my father died in 2020. It was peak COVID, and I was doing my HSC exams. So it was like those year 12 exams that everyone says are so important and that determine your life. If you're in year 12, they don't. Work as hard as you can. You will be okay. But yeah, that was the period of my exams. And he was really sick. He had heart problems. He had an aortic aneurysm, which is very hard to live with. So when he died, I had a feeling it would happen, but it happened so quickly. And I had to navigate life without someone that helped me make sense of it all. So that was quite hard. But something that I found also a bit harder is that a lot of people my age didn't have that experience, or at least personally that I knew. So I struggled quite a bit with that. I was really stressed about getting into uni in case I never got into uni. And my sisters, all credit to them, helped me so much. Like, they found me a therapist, and we had very engaging conversations, but I still felt a bit of hesitance to engage with people who are older than me whenever they'd ask me, like, if aunties were like, are you okay? I'd be like, yeah, I'm okay. I think it's that thing that, you know, people do when they don't want to go into it, which is very common. But what I did is I started talking to a lot of people my age and advocating online, because I had all of these emotions and all of these feelings, and I didn't have anyone to share it with, because grief is very layered. It isn't a singular experience. They say there are multiple stages of grief. There are like 5 stages. I think there are like 30, depending on who you are. But I started sort of talking about it from a lens of a second gen brown girl who had never experienced something like this, but also with the acknowledgement that there was a facet of stigma. And when I started talking about it online, there was a bit of like, why are you talking about this? Not in a bad way, but I think there was initial reaction of, do you want people to know that you have depression? Do you want people to know that you have anxiety? Do you want people to know that you've had these inherently not yet negative and sad feelings? And I was like, and this didn't come from anyone I directly knew in my personal family, but it was a lot of like outside, maybe some aunties here and there being like, but why is she doing this? Why is she being so vocal and so bold? And then the answer was, but I'm just being honest. And it's like you said before, vulnerability isn't always good for business, or it isn't good for in some people's eyes. But I think that facet or that aspect, of vulnerability is something that I hadn't seen immediately, and much more so the aspect of being able to just have a place to not even just word vomit, but like speak your truth and be like, this sucked. Grief is multifaceted. Life is multifaceted. So are relationships, and there should be a space to talk about it. And that's kind of where I started my advocacy from. Yeah.
I think you've created such a powerful community by normalizing that it's okay to talk about what you're going through. Has there been anyone's life that you may have directly impacted by normalizing these conversations or talking about what's been happening with your own personal life experience?
I think it's a joint effort. I think that, like, I used to work with Reach Out, so I did a lot of talks. Before I was a board director, I did a lot of talks with young people. And that, again, was a joint effort. It was me being vulnerable. It was them being vulnerable. It was being open to listen, them being open to listen to me. And once again, like, all of these people in the community that have, even like through Instagram Reels, helped me by sharing their experiences. Like, that's the thing about Instagram. I don't even need to talk to someone to feel connected to them or to feel like I am valid in my feelings. Like, even the things that you have posted, even the things that a lot of the women before me have posted, it's like, it's a shared community. And I think that if I have even impacted someone, whether it was during those talks of Reach Out or during my advocacy, I've done something. But I do think that it has truly been a joint effort.
Yeah. Absolutely. You've done a really great thing where you've helped people one-to-one with your experience in Reach Out, but then you've also advocated online, so you're reaching one-to-many. So you can't actually quantify how many people you've helped out. So social media is a place where you send out a message, and every time someone receives that message, you don't know, but you might have impacted their life.
Yeah, you know where it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's great that you've been doing that. What's something, or who are some people that maybe you aspire to be or take inspiration from online that may have impacted your ability to voice your feelings?
Ooh, so not online, but my older sisters. They inspire me a lot. There's not a day where I don't talk to them. There's not a day where I'm like, don't stalk their Facebooks or their LinkedIns. And I'm like, should I do that? So from a personal level, both of my sisters, I love them and I want to be just like them. But even from like an Instagram level, a Brown Boss Babes, Vidya Tavapalan, Heleni Sarat Kumara, Gather and Stitch, like all of these women online that have created space for other women, for us to be vulnerable, for us to be acknowledged. I credit my success to honestly all the women before me, whether they're my relatives, whether they're people that I know from Instagram, like you, those are like parts that have shaped me. Yeah.
You've also mentioned something that I speak a lot about, the whole concept of log kya kahenge.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on auntie culture?
Do we have like an hour to talk about this?
Just, you know what? Tell me what you feel about
auntie culture.
I
have great aunties. I have my aunties like that I grew up with that I still talk to, they're great. The ones that I don't talk to are because the culture, it is the culture. It's that culture I think of like gossiping and maybe comparison that they project onto other people's children, and then they turn around and they're like, I never said that, or I didn't mean that. And that was a really big kind of thing that happened to me after my dad died, is there were some aunties that turned around and became a bit like catty and bad auntie like I have a lot of amazing aunties, like I said, women that came before me, I love them. But I think the thing about auntie culture is there's this very strange, well, in relation to that specific archetype, there is a very specific culture of like always having to one up each other, or always having to one up someone's child, or always having to be better. And I just find that very toxic. And when I was younger, I was like, oh, this is normal. But then you go to like a white school and you're like, wait, no one else's aunties are like this.
That's right.
But I think that also stems from the patriarchy, to be fair. Like there is an aspect of competitiveness. There is an aspect of like maybe pitting, or women trying to do things, especially in relation to like their children, to one up, make each other better. And it's that comparison that I think stems from there. And also a lot of the times I've seen in the outside community, like people putting their sons on a pedestal, but like maybe not their daughters. And that's fairly common, except I haven't personally experienced that within my family. But it's even in like reflected in Bollywood movies. And when my friends and I are like, oh, we know people like that, it's a bit like, oh my God, wait, this still exists. I've definitely been auntie shamed. I don't know where it came from. And it was like body shaming as well. It was like weird body shaming. And I was like, aren't you like 50? Not even like age,
it's
but like
the aunties that aren't happy with themselves.
Yeah, like
that have the
you
most
have
judgments
children,
to
you
make.
have a lovely family, like you have a career, you have a home. Why are you talking about other people, let alone women, like kids who are younger than you? So yeah, it's a very strange culture, and it's something that I would definitely not be taking with me in terms of like inheritance from brown culture. But yeah, it's just something that I think women like in my age category and like your age are like really aware of, and that actively do not do.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't want to be an auntie that judges my kids' friends. What's the impact of this judgmental culture that little kids that potentially haven't even developed their prefrontal cortex at all, they're being, you know, they're being judged about everything while they're growing up, the education, what they wear, how much they weigh. What impact does that have on their self-esteem and their future?
I think well, speaking personally as someone that grew up like really like kind of overweight, I was on steroids for a long time because of a medical condition I was on. So that gave me a lot of extra weight. Whenever something was said about my body, I immediately shut down. And I spoke less, and I wanted to go out less. I thought like I would never, because I had like a myriad of health problems, including like eczema. And I was like, oh, so if like an older like auntie or like an older relative made even like a slight comment on my weight, I'd be like, am I ever going to get married? I know that's dumb, but I was like, oh, am I ever going to be good enough? And then you have predominantly Eurocentric media showing you all of these like beautiful women who have light skin, have blonde hair and the blue eyes, and you're like, that's not me. But I think especially when it passes from an elder, you shut down, you think less of yourself, or you're like, oh, but what should I look like? And when it comes from someone, especially that you're related to, like sometimes I'll be given really unsolicited health tips, like rice is bad for you. And I'm like, but it's in everything we eat. And it's a really strange thing to be told, especially young brown women or brown women, they're told it from the age of like 12 upwards, possibly even younger. So we carry these with us up until we're adults. And I think for me personally, it has really informed a lot of what I've done, even if like that specific relative or that specific person, I don't see them every day. They have no weight on me in terms of their opinions. I still keep it in because I'm like, what if other people perceive me like this? And they don't. But it does something to your self-confidence, especially if it's from when you're very young.
Because you see them as an authority figure, you know. They're already in your circle. They're already in your circle as someone that your family has introduced to you. So there's that trust and that credibility, and so you start to believe, you're more likely to believe what they say compared to someone else on the street.
In comparison,
very, very strong topic. I think it's also still unfortunate that this stuff still exists today. I know aunties personally that still comment about my weight, and I've kind of become a lot more nonchalant about that. I think I have enough self-confidence now over the past 3-4 years. I've tried to nurture a wall in front of me to make sure that stuff bounces off, as you should. And this is what this conversation is all about. So someone that might be in our position with some toxic aunties around us, the next time you feel that they might encounter something like this, what should they say? What should they do? How should they act?
I mean, deep inside, I want to be like, get a hobby, but actually in reality what I actually think is, well, when it comes from a relative that I know, in my head I have to be like, she's saying it out of concern, so I don't get upset. But it is, at the end of the day, depending on who you're speaking to, a projection. It could be like a genuine health tip. They are not a dietitian, so you don't need to take it. But it could be a genuine health tip. It could stem from concern. In my experience, it did stem from concern, and there were things behind it. So I tell myself, I'm like, they mean well. And even if they don't mean well, they should probably get a hobby. But the overall thing that I have to think to myself is like, you know what? Firstly, you do you. You don't need to take their opinion. And secondly, if there is like a genuine judgment behind it that may come off as a concern or is a concern, there are better ways to go about it. So like, even if an auntie is saying something out of concern, sometimes they don't say it correctly. And you can address that within yourself. You don't need an external opinion, even if it's an elder, to weigh on you that heavily. So yeah, you do you, and do that introspection yourself.
I think you've articulated that so well. And it's a great segue into the next part, which is about strong women. So what do you think, based on everything you've just said so far and your wealth of knowledge with mental health and experiencing the logya kahenge multiple times in your life, what constitutes a strong woman in today's society?
Great question. That is a good question. What constitutes a strong woman is her ability to think for herself and believe in herself. I think that a lot of the time, like for example, what I find really cute is when I was little, I used to play with Barbies, and my Barbies would always get married. And then when I see my nieces, they'll play with Barbies, but the big life event will be like, oh, they've graduated from university, or they are, it's like a shift, right? So being a strong woman, in my opinion, doesn't amount to just one thing. It amounts to your ability to be yourself. It amounts to your ability to say no and learn and be confident within you. So I think being a strong woman today means multiple different things, but also a part of it is not, how do I say this?
It's a heavy question.
Yeah, it is a heavy question. Not giving into the mold is essentially my thing. You do you, no matter what anyone says. And that's a very basic answer, but it's true. In society, especially within like the Desi community, a lot of things are put on us from a very young age. And I think that not all of them are inherently horrible, but you don't need to do everything that is placed upon you. You have the ability to do you. And I think that's something that I will teach my daughters. They have to learn piano, but that's something that I want to teach my daughters is you are your own individual, and I would like you to grow as your own individual.
Yeah. I love the way you've mentioned that, you are allowed to be malleable. That's fine. Mm-hmm. That's completely okay. But you're allowed to take up space, but you don't have to fit every single room that you're in. Yeah. You can take space in that room. Yeah. You don't have to fit it. You don't need to change yourself. Great advice. Now, what do you think might be an impediment or something that stops women from being strong in today's society?
What is something? Oh, I could make a list of this, but something that stops women from being, misogyny. Sometimes culture, particularly like the negative aspects of culture. What else? There's so much, but like, how do you even articulate it?
What's something that you feel like has impeded your ability to be strong in the past?
Stigma, like the way that people think or perceive women sometimes. I think a lot of it stems from, like, I've been told by aunties like, oh, she's too bold or she talks too much. And to that, I say, you don't talk enough, or
absolutely,
you need to stop teaching your girls that they're too much. Like, I understand that Desi people especially have a perceived notion of behavior or how a woman should act, and you should always act proper, but you should never put someone into a box. And I feel like a lot of the times women are expected to do a lot, but then it's like, why are you doing so much? So a lot of the times they're put in a box, but it's also like, you have so many boxes to be put in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think what you said about, maybe an auntie in your life has told you to be a little bit quieter, be softer. Women are meant to be soft and gentle and nurturers. No matter what you do, you could be soft. The auntie will still tell you you're too soft.
They will always find a problem.
They will always find a problem. So you're right. Going back to your advice before, just do you, because people are going to say stuff regardless. I get so much every day, day in, day out. I don't know if you know, but I do pole dancing. So that in itself is just a massive slap in the face.
Actually, I have seen that on your Instagram. You're so good at it as well.
Thank you. I don't really do it anymore, but yeah, that in itself is just, it's like a big sign to say, come and judge me. And I was judged. But the same advice that you've given before, I just do me, because no matter what I do, I'll get judged.
You go, girl.
Yeah, we go, girl.
Why that's such a crazy thing to judge, like dancing. Why are you judging dancing?
I think it's just a stereotype.
It is a stereotype.
A pole being there, and then that act itself is sexualized in society. But I mean, it's just a power move. I literally did it as a power move, and my parents actually supported me. I'm very lucky with the support systems in my life that they understand exactly where I'm at and why I do things.
Go mommy daddy.
Going on that tangent, support systems. You've mentioned, for example, your sisters have been your biggest support systems. How important is it to be vulnerable with certain people in your life and to talk about things that you're going through? You mentioned this in the beginning. So how important it is to be speaking up.
I understand it's very difficult, but from my personal experience, vulnerability is honesty. And if you aren't comfortable, or if it takes some time for you to be vulnerable, which I totally understand, my thing is, sometimes if you're not vulnerable or if you're not completely honest, it can be harder to find mechanisms to help yourself or to help other people if they're not willing to open up. And to each their own. It takes a lot of time, but I think it's really important to be vulnerable, because not only does it teach yourself, but it teaches others that it's okay not to be okay. And that's something that I found a lot when my dad died, is that I felt like it was a barrier to ask for help because I didn't want to burden other people. But you don't burden other people because you burden yourself when you carry the load by yourself, and then eventually it all falls apart. But then other people feel you falling apart. You know what I mean? It affects every facet of your life. So it's okay to ask for help over and over again. That's the beauty of vulnerability. And that's the thing about grief and ill mental health, is that it's not a straight line. It's not a straight trajectory. It's going to be so messy and it's going to be so confusing. But you can ask for help over and over again. And once again, that's like one of the hardest things to do, is to be like, I need help. But once you do it, it starts this like progression that isn't always easy. It gets easy and it gets hard every single time. But I think that is the importance of vulnerability, is starting with yourself and being like, am I okay with talking about this? And then once you find that space and you find that place, just to take baby steps in terms of what you want to talk about and what you're okay with sharing.
Yeah, wow. Now, I know a lot of people that won't share anything that's going in their life just to protect me, because they don't want to burden my life. What's some advice you'd give to those people?
I understand where you're coming from, but you're not a burden for carrying that load or for being upset. That's something that I struggled with. I still struggle with that sometimes. Like if there's something really bad going on in my life or something that's upsetting, I will typically find it hard because I'm like, everyone has their own stuff going on. Why should I add to the load? So I totally get that. But I think that's the thing about how beautiful community is and how beautiful friends and family are, is we can share the load. And even if you're uncomfortable with sharing every detail of it, if you truly need help, what you share is up to you. And I think I would say that to someone who isn't immediately okay with sharing what they're experiencing and what they're going through, is that it's baby steps. It's that you don't have to tell someone everything. You can just tell people little by little. You can, whether it's a professional or your family or your friends, especially in a brown family, it's really hard to tell other relatives and other families. But that is what I would say, is you can either let it all out or you can start with baby steps. But I'd recommend the starting with baby steps, because it will make sense to you the most once you start doing things for yourself and once you process what you want to say and how you want to say it.
No, you've definitely worded that really well. I think I absolutely agree with you. I think generally, even myself, like when I'm sharing something with someone, I want to make sure they have the energy capacity to actually take it in. But then what that ends up doing is, if you keep storing all of this inside continually, you're going to burst. So before you feel like, maybe I shouldn't share this with this person because I don't want to burden them, I should actually think about the repercussions of, if I don't share this right now, and if I don't be vulnerable, then something might happen to me, which will actually in turn impact this person much more than if I just shared with them that I'm not okay.
Yeah. And I think, like, for example, suicide, trigger warning, suicide and suicidal thoughts are very real in people. They're very real in our community, and they often go unsaid. And the worst possible outcome is that person thinking that they can't carry that load alone and thinking that they're a burden, when no person is really a burden ever. And it is as someone that's been in a very, very, very dark place in life, I only felt better once and it can be hard, whether it's with a therapist that you've only known for a single session or with your cousin who you've known all your life but haven't been vulnerable with. It gets better when you share the load. It might not get better straight away, but it does get easier. And I think that's a part of it.
That's so beautiful to share. And I think our audience today would have learned a lot about everything that we've talked about, your experiences. To wrap up today, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to someone that's watching? I know you've got a lot of advice, and if you want to know, if you want to see more and hear more of Tiara, you can follow her. All of the information will be in the show notes. But if there is one single piece of advice around the topic of vulnerability, mental health, everything that you've experienced, what would you share to our audience?
Wow. What I would share is that, and I said this before, but you're not a burden, or you're not wrong for asking for help over and over and over again. You're not invalid for feeling something that other people may not understand, immediately at least. And you're not wrong for feeling the way that you feel. There is always someone that will say something. Exhibit A aunties, but they don't have your life. They don't have your experiences. Everyone has a wealth of experience and a diversity of it. So, and I know this is hard, but the more time passes, you have to try not to think about what other people think as much, and think about what's best for you.
Beautiful. Just like you.
Like you.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Bad Podcast. If you guys want to follow Tiara, information will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining me today and sharing something that's so important.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining.